Welcome back to Mental Mike's Recovery Radio, where recovery meets discovery. I am Mental Mike, and this is episode 12. I want you to take a breath before we begin. A real one. If you have walked this entire journey with me, I want you to understand what that means. You did not just learn about recovery, you lived it. This final week of your foundational study is where everything comes together. It is the point of convergence, where the science, the energy work, the shadow, the ancestral healing, the presence, the patterns, all of it weaves into a single unified understanding of who you actually are. In my work with the Unified Flux Model, I have always believed that addiction is not a moral failing. It is a fragmentation of the self, a disruption of your natural energetic flow. And so, recovery, real recovery, is not just about stopping a behavior. It is about becoming whole again. This week, the UFM takes us through some of the deepest territory we have covered together. We look at the biology of human connection, how the people around you are literally shaping your brain through mirror neurons. We go into shadow integration, not just the painful parts you have buried, but the gifts and the power you have suppressed too. And we follow Nietzsche's map of the soul, the camel, the lion, and the child, to find out where you are on the path to authentic freedom. Because the destination I have always held for you in this work is not the lion's fight. It is the child's joy, creating from your essence, not reacting to your past. And today, I am honored to introduce you to Marissa. Marissa's story sits right at the heart of everything Week 12 asks you to face and to claim. Because Marissa knows what it means to carry fragments of yourself you were never given permission to own. Her journey toward integration, toward wholeness, toward finally stepping into the person she was always meant to be, reflects the deepest truth I have tried to offer through the Unified Flux Model. You were never broken. Your flow was just temporarily blocked. Marissa found her way back to the flow, and I believe her story will speak directly to something in you. So settle in, take one more breath, and let's finish this foundation together.
Welcome. And if you're joining us for this final discussion in your foundational study, just take a breath, a real one.
Please do.
You've reached week 12. That's a huge milestone. And the work you've put in over the last 3 months, well, it's laid the foundation for some really profound, lasting change.
That's absolutely true. This week isn't just about wrapping things up. It's the point of convergence. Our mission here is to take all those principles and weave them together
Into a unified understanding of the self.
Exactly. Using the structure laid out by Mental Mike in his Unified Flux Model, the UFM.
And of course, Mental Mike is the certified counselor and educator who created the UFM by integrating these, really disparate fields, quantum physics, neuroscience,
And spiritual psychology.
Yeah.
His whole approach is designed to give you a complete holistic picture of what transformation actually is.
What's really central to the Unified Flux Model is its promise about addiction itself.
Right. Mental Mike teaches that addiction is not a moral failing. It's not just a bad habit. It is fundamentally an energetic disruption.
An energetic disruption that fragments the self.
Yes. And so recovery becomes the restoration of flow, the restoration of wholeness.
That reframing is so powerful. But if I'm listening right now and I'm still feeling fragmented, maybe a little stuck, how do I know if that's an energetic disruption or just, life?
It connects right back to one of Mental Mike's core truths. You're not a fixed thing. You are a dynamic process.
A temporary configuration of borrowed molecules on borrowed time.
That's the one. When we see ourselves as a process instead of a static product, we realize that fragmentation is just resistance to change. Real energy comes from aligning with that continuous flow.
So the story changes from I am broken to my flow is temporarily blocked.
Exactly. And this Week 12 study guide gives you the framework to remove those blocks, to move from the stabilization you've achieved toward, true mastery.
Let's start with something we can all relate to, our connection to other people.
We can begin with the biology of that connection, what the UFM calls energetic contagion. It's all about mirror neurons.
Okay, so these are the specialized brain cells, right?
Yeah.
In the premotor cortex. They fire when you do something.
And when you watch someone else do that same thing, it's basically our brain's built-in simulation network.
It's the mechanism for empathy, for learning, for social bonding.
But here's the critical piece for recovery. Mirror neurons don't discriminate. They don't judge good from bad or peace from chaos. They just reflect.
So that's the science behind why being around anxious people can actually make you feel anxious.
It is. And if we look at addiction through that UFM lens, we can see substance use as a socially transmitted pattern. If your early environment was saturated with it, your mirror neurons encoded that as a learned response.
A natural response to stress.
And they keep reinforcing those old pathways. It's why it can be so hard to escape those old settings.
Your brain is literally programmed to reflect that environment's frequency.
It is. But here's the opportunity in the UFM. If mirror neurons can transmit dysfunction, they are just as capable of transmitting healing.
And that's the action step for you. It's about meticulously curating your social field, committing to high-resonance relationships, connecting with a recovery community.
You're performing intentional, self-directed neuroplasticity. You're physically rewiring your brain to mirror balance and growth.
This idea of connection goes even deeper, though, doesn't it? Beyond biology into something metaphysical.
It does. It takes us into quantum entanglement, what some people call spooky action at a distance.
The physics concept, where two particles are linked, and what happens to one instantly affects the other, no matter how far apart they are.
Mental Mike applies this to our deep human bonds, especially trauma bonds and family entanglements. These connections create energetic threads that can pull you right back into old patterns.
Generational patterns.
Exactly. We know from epigenetics that inherited pain can actually alter gene expression. You might literally be carrying ancestral pain.
That sounds heavy, overwhelming.
Yeah.
If I'm entangled, how do I get free?
The task is conscious disentanglement. It's about reclaiming your energetic sovereignty. This means setting incredibly strong energetic boundaries. It also means practices like radical forgiveness are actually for you.
It's not for the other person.
No. Releasing that resentment, that rage, it's a powerful act of self-liberation. You're freeing your own energy field from the pull of that past dynamic.
To get that kind of internal freedom, you have to look inward. You have to face the parts of yourself you've pushed away.
And that leads us straight to Carl Jung and the concept of the shadow.
Which is essential to the UFM.
Absolutely. The shadow is basically the container for everything you've denied or disowned about yourself. And what people often miss is that it's not just the negative traits.
It's the positive potential, too.
Yes, your creativity, your power, your joy, things you were taught, maybe subconsciously, to suppress.
And that suppressed stuff, it doesn't just go away.
Not at all. Addiction often starts as a way to medicate or escape the shadow. That unexpressed anger or grief, it builds this huge internal pressure. Substance use becomes a temporary release valve.
So repressing it just makes it more destructive. The goal isn't to kill the shadow.
The goal is integration, to bring that material into your conscious awareness. Jung called this journey individuation, the path to becoming a whole unified self.
So how do you start? I mean, where do you look for clues about what you're hiding from yourself?
Well, the shadow often reveals itself most clearly through projection.
Okay, explain that.
If you find yourself having this intense, just totally disproportionate reaction to a quality in someone else, say their arrogance or their neediness, that person is probably mirroring a disowned part of you.
So if I can't stand how someone always needs to be in charge,
You might be looking at your own denied need for control, or maybe even your own untapped potential for leadership.
that person isn't the problem. They're the messenger.
Precisely. The intense emotion is an invitation to look inward and ask, what part of this have I been told I can't express?
That is an incredible tool for self-assessment.
Mm.
And when you integrate that shadow, you can step into this really powerful identity. The wounded healer archetype.
Yes. The wounded healer is a universal pattern. It shows that your past suffering, the addiction, the crisis, it isn't just history, it's a source of power. When you own your story, you transform it into a capacity to heal, for yourself and eventually for others.
Let's shift a little bit to the metaphysics. This is where the Unified Flux Model really challenges our basic assumptions about reality itself.
It does. The whole process rests on the idea that consciousness, not just brain chemistry, is the primary driver of your transformation.
Mental Mike uses the holographic model to explain this.
Right. Based on work by people like Itzhak Bentov, the idea is you can shatter a hologram, but every tiny piece still contains the whole image, just maybe less clearly.
So the implication is that my individual consciousness is a fractal, a small piece that still contains the entire universal consciousness.
Exactly. And this is the holographic principle. When you change one small, genuine part of yourself, One core belief, one daily habit, you change the entire system.
Because the whole system is reflected within me.
Yes. It's why tiny, authentic insights can trigger these massive shifts in your life.
That's empowering. Knowing my quiet internal work has universal reach. Now, let's talk about time. So many of us get caught in regret about the past or anxiety about the future.
Which is why the UFM includes the timeless light model. Physics tells us that light exists outside of linear time. A photon traveling at light speed experiences no time passing at all.
And the model suggests our essential consciousness, our true nature, shares that quality.
It does. It exists beyond the clock. Addiction traps us in time, the shame of the past, the fear of the future. But your true self, like light, was never actually damaged by any of it.
The core of me is untouched.
Precisely. And the practical application of this is presence. Cultivating presence, just fully inhabiting this moment, is how you align with your timeless nature. Transformation happens right now.
And underpinning this whole vision is Spinoza's idea of God, which Mental Mike uses to define the unified flux.
Yes, Spinoza argued that God isn't separate from the universe. God is the universe. He called it Diosif Natra, God, or nature. Everything is a part of this single, infinite substance.
So there's no separation.
There is no separation. Aligning with the unified flux is just recognizing that unity. Addiction is the illusion of being separate. Recovery is the return to that wholeness.
And that clarity is where freedom comes from.
It is. Spinoza said bondage is being reactive, pushed around by things you don't understand. That's the cycle of addiction. But freedom is acting from a clear understanding of your own nature. Self-awareness isn't just a tool, it's the central act of recovery.
Okay, so if self-awareness is the key, we need a map. A way to see where we are and what to do next.
And that's why Mental Mike includes Nietzsche's 3 metamorphoses of the spirit. It's a brilliant map for the soul's journey to freedom: the camel, the lion, and the child.
Let's start with the camel. What does that look like in recovery?
The camel is the spirit of duty and burden. It kneels down to be loaded up with external expectations, all the shoulds. In recovery, this looks like duty-driven sobriety. You're sober because you have to be, but there's no real internal motivation yet.
Then comes the lion, the rebellion needed to shed those burdens.
The lion is the spirit that roars no to all that external authority. This stage is vital. It's about claiming your power, setting boundaries, and rejecting the false stories addiction told you.
But Mental Mike warns about getting stuck as the lion.
Right. Because if you only define yourself by what you're fighting against, fighting triggers, fighting your past, you're still reactive. Your identity is still tied to the addiction.
So the destination, the real freedom, is the child.
The child embodies creative innocence. It operates from a secret yes to life. It's spontaneous, joyous. Freedom is reached here when you move beyond defining yourself as someone in recovery and you just are, creating your life from your authentic essence.
And this progression works alongside the 7 stages of transformation we've covered before, moving from dissolution, the crisis, all the way to emanation.
Right, which is when your transformation overflows into service. That's the wounded healer stepping up. These frameworks help you pinpoint where you are and what's needed to move toward the freedom of the child.
We've covered a lot. Quantum physics, Jung, Nietzsche. For the listener, what does this look like day to day? Mental Mike talks about the paradox of effort and surrender.
This is key. You have to apply maximum effort in your actions. Show up, do the work, but you also need complete surrender with your identity. Release control of the outcomes and trust the unified flux.
The lion puts in the effort, the child surrenders to the flow.
Beautifully put.
And we have to practice this. The study guide gives 3 indispensable tools for this week. First is energetic inventory mapping.
This is a visualization tool to protect your energy field. You draw circles to represent your social life. You identify who and what is nourishing you and who or what is, well, depleting you. It forces radical honesty.
And the action step.
You pick one situation that's a major drain, and you commit to one concrete boundary. Maybe less contact, maybe changing how you interact. Protecting your energy isn't selfish, it's sovereignty.
Next is the bioelectric reset, the 4-7-8 breathing pattern.
This is for immediate nervous system regulation. The long exhale activates your parasympathetic nervous system. It calms you down from the inside out. It's an intentional exchange with the universe, using your breath to shift your frequency.
And finally, somatic emotional clearing. This is about the energy trapped in the body.
It is. This practice is about release, using sound and intuitive movement. Maybe it's just a deep sigh, a groan, gentle rocking. The point is to give that suppressed energy, the shadow material, a physical outlet so it doesn't build up and pull you back.
These practices are what deepen the transformation you've already started.
Yeah,
And
right.
speaking of deepening, congratulations again on finishing this 12-week foundation. Mental Mike's vision for what's next, it moves from stabilizing to creating.
Yes. The next phase of the curriculum is about actualization and contribution. It's about taking your transformation and applying it with purpose out in the world.
You've gained this incredible framework for living. You now know you're a dynamic expression of the infinite, always becoming. You're now someone whose presence can inspire others just by being who you are.
And as you move forward, I want you to consider the ultimate freedom that Mental Mike describes through Nietzsche's child. That spirit acts from spontaneous joy, not because it has to, but because creation is its very nature. So if your sobriety still feels like the lion's fight or the camel's duty, what single step toward play or creative expression can you take this week? Just one small step to align with the child, trusting that your transformation itself is enough.
This podcast messed me up in a way I wasn't expecting, not because it talked about addiction. I've heard addiction talk my whole life. Meetings, rehab, therapists, probation officers, everybody talks about stopping substances, but this one talked about becoming whole again. That's different. Like when they said addiction was an energetic disruption that fragments the self, I just sat there staring at my phone for a minute, because fragmented is exactly how I've always felt. Like different broken versions of me were fighting each other constantly. One version trying to stay sober. One version terrified of abandonment. One version angry all the time. One version pretending everything was fine. And somewhere underneath all that, there was probably a real me I hadn't seen since childhood. That's what this episode brought up for me, especially the shadow stuff. I spent years thinking recovery meant becoming a better person. What I'm starting to realize now is that recovery might actually mean becoming an honest person. That's harder. The podcast talked about projection, about how the things we react to hardest in other people usually point back toward ourselves. And that hit me immediately because I've always hated controlling people, like really hated them. Bossy people, manipulative people, people trying to dominate situations. Then my therapist asked me a question I couldn't stop thinking about. What if your anger isn't only about them? What if you buried your own need for control because it felt unsafe growing up? That question cracked something open in me, because when you grow up in chaos, you learn to survive by adapting to everybody else's emotions. You become whoever keeps the peace. That was my whole personality. No boundaries, no real opinions, no real identity, just emotional survival. The podcast called Addiction a Release Valve for Unexpressed Pressure. That's exactly what opioids became for me. Not excitement, not partying. Relief. Relief from carrying emotions I never learned how to express safely. And honestly, hearing them describe recovery as restoring flow instead of fixing brokenness made me emotional, because I've spent most of my life believing I was damaged beyond repair. The part that stayed with me most was Nietzsche's thing about the camel, lion, and child. That was powerful. I've definitely lived as the camel before, carrying everybody else's expectations, trying to be who everybody needed me to be. Then early recovery turned me into the lion. Angry, defensive, fighting everything, fighting triggers, fighting people, fighting myself. But the child part, that one almost made me cry. The idea that healing eventually becomes less about fighting and more about learning how to live freely again. That sounds impossible sometimes, but also beautiful. I realized something while listening to this episode. I honestly don't know what brings me joy anymore. Not fake dopamine hits, not an escape, real joy. That scared me because addiction stole so much time. But maybe that's where the child comes in. Maybe recovery isn't just about avoiding destruction. Maybe it's relearning creativity, curiosity, play, peace. The episode talked about mirror neurons too, how we absorb energy from the people around us. That explained why staying around certain people still drains me completely. I used to think boundaries were selfish. Now I think they're survival. I'm finally learning that protecting my energy isn't cruelty. It's responsibility, and for the first time in my life, I think I'm slowly becoming somebody real instead of somebody adaptive. That's terrifying sometimes, but it also feels like breathing fresh air after being underwater too long. Maybe that's what healing actually is. Not becoming somebody new, just finally meeting the self that got buried underneath all the survival mechanisms.
If something in this conversation stood out to you, don't ignore that. That's usually where the work begins. Recovery isn't about trying harder. It's about understanding what's actually happening and learning how to respond differently over time. If you're ready to take the next step, you can find resources, guidance, and support at soulrecoveryhub.com. Take what you heard today, sit with it, and keep moving forward. Copyright 2026, Mental Mike, all rights reserved.